Hey guys, welcome to the video. John Bodine here with Redemptive Psych, and today we're going to just look at the article I wrote on George Washington, talking about his life, talking about his traits, and then analyzing his personality. If you guys don't want spoilers, if you want to read through the article on your own, I'll pin it down below. It's on my website, as you can see here in the articles tab. So I'm just going to jump in right now to just share my thoughts, my approach to writing this article, and kind of how my perception of Washington changed. So going in, I was pretty sure he was one of the STJ types. Most people think he's one of the STJs, and I think that's correct. I think he certainly is. You see a lot of, I mean, if you just read a little bit about him, you see a lot of evidence for pretty profound administrative skills, particularly in combination with his time as a soldier and a general, and then obviously as president. He was a great administrator. He knew how to organize things, how to get things done. He was very effective to that end. So we'll walk through just a little bit of his life. I talk in the intro here about some stuff, but you guys can read that if you want in the article. So I use a couple books for this. Paul Johnson was my main source, and then some short excerpts from other people, including Michael Hart's book. If you guys want, I've used this book, Michael Hart's the 100 ranking the most influential people in history. If you guys are interested in like trying to type via reading and like just reading little blurbs about people, it's like 4 or 5 pages or less for each of the 100 profiles. It's a great way to practice typing if you can just get a little bit of information and kind of figure out, based on this limitation, what can I discern about this person. I recommend you guys getting that book if you want to practice typing via text and via little biographies. So Washington was, as you might imagine, a pretty interesting guy. The first thing I talked about in the article is his presence. He's very, very tall. 6'2" for that day was very tall. And they talked about that being a really important trait for his authority, that he didn't have to work as hard to be an authority because he was so tall. He had a great presence. We think of Washington as being a president and a general and a warrior and a soldier, and he absolutely was those things. But that wasn't really the life that he sought out, at least via the research that I did. He had a great estate at Mount Vernon. He loved farming. He made great expansions to the house itself. He acquired a bunch of new skills. He seemed to really enjoy the process of, hey, I don't know how to do this thing. I'm going to go learn some about it, figure out how to do it, and then expand it. He was really wealthy too. He had a lot of land, particularly even more so after he got married to Martha, but he had a lot of land before that too. And he seemed to take great care to farm it, to cultivate it, to build, to expand it. He really had a mansion of sorts, including his land. So he was quite wealthy. Early on, he was a surveyor. Interesting detail, he almost crossed paths with Napoleon. If he had gone over to be a naval officer in Britain, which he was thinking about, which is funny because he ended up fighting against Britain. He didn't have enough of interest, is what it's called, quote unquote. I talk about that in the article a bit. Think of interest kind of like your reputation plus your connections. So if you're low on interest in going to the military, you're unlikely to rise, or at least rise quickly. So that's why he didn't join the British Navy. So he was a surveyor for a while, a farmer, and a builder. He was very much a man of the land, and he really liked spending time in his land and riding around on horseback. He was a great horse rider, and did well with that. So talked about a bit about his being a soldier and a general. This little detail here is interesting, that Johnson talks about his strategy against the British, fighting a war of attrition. It was his belief that, provided he and his army remained in the field, the financial and human cost of the war to Britain would increase, and the political opposition to Britain, would increase, and the will for them to continue would weaken. So he hoped, his belief was that, as outnumbered and disadvantaged as they were at times, If he could just stick it out with his men, then eventually they would win, and that is kind of what happened. So anyway, I'm not going to go over all the details here, but let's just get into his type, and then, like I said, you guys can read the article if you are interested in that. If you guys are trying to get better at typing, I'd recommend you read the article because I'm analyzing. We don't have footage, we don't have him on a talk show. I'm analyzing stories about him. If you guys want to learn how to type that way, I would recommend reading it, and at least to get the perspective that I put forth there. So. Okay, so as you will surely see if you read the article, I believe he's an ISTJ, not an ESTJ. And I walked into this research path about a month ago thinking, you know what, I think Washington's an ESTJ. I see the pattern of authority in his life. He rose through the ranks, he became president, served 2 terms, and ESTJs like authority. And I was like, oh yeah, that guy's definitely not definitely. I thought there was a chance he's an ISTJ, but probably an ESTJ. But then I started reading more and more and more, and I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is an ISTJ. And there's a lot of reasons we could look at for that. There's 2 I'm going to look at in particular. The first one is in this section, man of detail and routine. He was extremely conscientious about some of his habits, and some of his habits are kind of peculiar. So this one right here is really important. From the age of 14, Washington kept every scrap of paper belonging to him, every scrap of paper. Diaries, letters, sent and received, accurate and often day-to-day interactions, and saw to it that they were carefully arranged and preserved his life as the best documented of any spent in the entire 18th century anywhere. Okay, so why would an ESTJ do this? An ESTJ might do this for the development of discipline, for arranging their life in a specific way to expand their ability to rely on their SI, basically. But Washington seemed to just want to do this because he wanted to, because it was an interest of him, and no doubt it developed discipline and conscientiousness. But SI, like if someone's going to do something that much and that often, you have to start thinking about a hero function, maybe a child function, something that's easy for us to use. And an ESTJ is unlikely to keep this up for years and years and years, especially this thoroughly, especially the process of just keeping and collecting everything. ISTJs can be sometimes some of the worst hoarders, at least with stuff that they think is important, even if it's just trivial. And this is a version of that trait. I don't know if he was a hoarder or not, but just keeping all the trivial stuff and the important stuff, that's a very ISTJ thing, not wanting to discriminate that too much. So this is already looking at, this is more evidence for SI hero here, even if it's just kind of circumstantial evidence. But this is really, really important little detail here. Johnson later talks about his routine, at least after his presidency. It was very regular, had a very strict schedule. But he also seemed to enjoy himself. Like he really liked just riding around and tending to his land. So most important thing here, though, in my opinion, about ESTJ versus ISTJ is in this section, if Washington's relationship with authority. And I've talked to at least one of you in the comments who wanted me to look at some other sources. But anyway, so based on my research and really the story, Washington, he had multiple attempts to claim more authority in his life, and he didn't really want them. This quote from Hart in the 100 book: he had no ambition to hold power indefinitely. He did not wish to be either a king or a dictator, and he set a precedent for the peaceful transition, the peaceful relinquishment of power, a precedent which has been followed in the United States to this day. Okay, so this was my thought process going through this. At first I thought, you know what, he's an ESTJ, and that moment of giving up authority is evidence of him being, a really impressive guy. And then I realized that's very idealistic of me. And as I started to see he's probably an ISTJ, I started to realize again that, you know what, if someone does something exceptional, the chances are it's because it's easier for that type to do it than it is actually, this great moment, and those great moments do happen, but the chances of a human transcending their drives is lower um, than them being a type that is more comfortable with this. So if you look into Washington, you will see that his interest in life was living a more simple life. Um, and of course, he was probably a brilliant politician and very um, effective and cared about being effective. But this moment where he had the opportunity to potentially become a king and just let it go, um, any way you want to frame it, it's hard to frame it in any way except for seeing it as he didn't want the authority, he didn't want the power, and certainly he still kept influence after that. But that detail right there, EST, that would be much harder for an ESTJ to do for sure, much harder. So there's that, and it happened again. It happened before when he was when they asked him to be general, of the entire military, and he did not want to. He wrote to his wife afterwards. So far from seeking the appointment of being commander, I have used every endeavor in my power to avoid it. So those two moments, having total control of the military and perhaps taking a step to becoming king or dictator of the United States, he resisted it. He didn't want it. And then obviously with the presidency, he gave that up after two terms. So those two things there, the extreme amount of autobiographical detail that he gathered, and then this relationship with authority is two of the most important pieces of evidence that I believe he is uh, a an ISTJ and not an ESTJ. Also, the battle of attrition that he fought uh, with the British, I argued that that was evidence for a progression type of focusing on the process of enduring and like how can we stick out there better and then hoping that the outcome will take care of itself. You could argue with that, like you could argue about that because an ESTJ might have a similar strategy, but it would be more focused on getting to the outcome, particularly probably faster too. Yeah, just to recap briefly with the functions, with the details, the awareness of details and duty and patience, and the awareness of interest and the administrative skills, we're already looking at a TESI user. And I played with like INFP and the ENFP just is not there, but INFP I played with, but there's just not enough evidence for him being abstract. He's a very concrete guy of the earth. Um, Although I will say STJs are harder to type with the abstract concrete vector because they're more open to ideas. They're kind of scholars by trade, even if just amateur scholars. So I wouldn't put too much weight necessarily into the abstract concrete with the STJs, but there's just not a lot of evidence for him being abstract. So I think he's definitely a concrete guy, particularly if you just look at his interest and what he spent his time doing and whatnot. So this little quote down here, he's talking about his why he likes farming and like watching plants grow and the satisfaction he gets from that. There's a reflectiveness there. This little quote here, he's talking about what farming does for him. Um, that it fills a contemplative mind with ideas which are more easily conceived than expressed. Okay, Jung talked about this with all the IJs, that they have these images, these experiences that they feel very deeply and very richly, but they have a hard time communicating them. And ESTJ does not really struggle to communicate effectively. And they have less of a reflective mind. And he's talking about the farming being a recharging thing for him to wash over that SI hero. And then these ideas are not necessarily easily expressed, like all the IJs will struggle with. Um, but they grant satisfaction to him. So yeah, so I believe Washington was an ISTJ, guys. I actually think people have it right. If you look him up, look into research about what people think his type is. Most people think he's an ISTJ. It's rare that you have AI and personality database right. Some people think he's an ESTJ. I did a month ago, probably think he was an ESTJ. But after looking at the evidence, I just don't see it. I think this guy's an introvert. I think he's concrete. I think he's more process oriented, but more so, I think he's SI hero. So much SI hero. So Anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed thinking about George Washington. I'm working on some other people right now. I want to get some more historical characters, people out there. I do want to hear from you guys if you guys are interested in historical characters in general, because I do plan to do more, and I am actually working on one right now. Another big name from history that a lot of you guys have requested, but it'd be helpful for me to know the level of interest from you guys. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. This was George Washington. Again, go check out the article if you want to more, if you want to learn how I did this and maybe apply it to yourself. If you guys are interested in getting better at typing. So anyway, guys, thanks for stopping by. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you around.